So, Ben, first of all, grew up in Chicago. Take me back. Was it your dad who got you in the triathlon to start out?
Yeah, so grew up in a western suburb of Chicago, Geneva, Illinois, and my dad was involved in triathlon when I was really, really young, and remember watching him do the Chicago Triathlon back then. I think it was Mrs. T's back in the day. So I remember on Lower Wacker Drive watching him ride by on the bike, and kind of grew up in transition areas a little bit. And I just remember kind of wanting to be like him and watch the Ironman on TV. And finally, my parents and a few other local triathletes put together a kids' triathlon not too far from my house. So that was my first chance to do it. Yeah.
Now, so at 7 years old, you saw your dad racing. So at 8, you started swimming?
I started swimming around 7. I think that was at a suggestion of our next door neighbors at the time. It was just it was a summer club only, the Geneva River Rat. So, and then after about a year or two of that, the triathlon team came along a little bit later, as well as a more competitive swim team.
So there was a group back there called the Multisport Maniacs. Can you guys all hear out there? No. Okay. So it's okay for you, though. Okay. So Multisport Maniacs. Talk mellow. Okay. So Multisport Maniacs was a club for kids in Chicago. You came out of that program. Lucas Verzbikas came out of that program. Kevin McDowell came out of that program. 3 top-level athletes, and there was some more. What was it about that program that was so successful?
Yeah, the mastermind behind it was Keith Dixon, and he's really the one that was the idea guy. It took a lot of behind-the-scenes work from different parents and stuff to schlep our gear around and kind of help us get from race to race and really organize it well. But that idea behind it, he wanted a high-performance team that mimicked a lot of the swim clubs that he grew up on. And he swam at the University of Florida at a competitive level, at the collegiate level, D1. And he wanted something like that for triathlon, and it just so happened that for whatever reason in the Fox Valley area there that we were able to put together a very strong group of kids, and it was the combination of a good group of kids who were driven and wanted to do well in triathlon and were very competitive, and also kind of like the vision and the organization that the parents and Keith put together for us.
What I liked about that program, it seemed that the kids didn't burn out, right? It seemed like, just from working with Lucas ran, a sub 4-minute mile in high school, and I know he wasn't running more than 30 miles a week when he did that. Was that part of the magic of Keith Dixon, was keeping mileage short, mileage low?
I don't know if we kept mileage low. I kind of look back at a lot of the stuff. We'd do a trip out to Galena, Illinois, kind of in farm country, and his house had to have been 10 or 15 miles from a lake, where we'd ride our bike out to the lake and swim in the lake, and then we'd ride our way back. And we had kind of these big training camps and stuff. But I think the reason that a lot of us didn't burn out and there was a good retention of athletes is just because we all loved the sport so much, and we were very competitive. You look at the people who lasted, and all of them were very competitive and knew that triathlon from that young age, from the team that we were on, that's what they wanted to do and what they wanted to carry on with. And we were just given the environment to kind of excel at that.
Were your thoughts at that point Olympic triathlon, or were you thinking swimming or thinking running? Because you ran and swam throughout high school and college.
Yeah, I think my parents encouraged me to do a little bit of everything, so I played baseball and soccer, and I think hopping from sport to sport, I wanted to, like a lot of little kids, I wanted to be a professional in some aspects, so I wanted to be a professional baseball player for a while, but that didn't work out. I wasn't very good. And then swimming also, like watching the Olympic Games, like swimming is something that's very easy to turn on the TV and see it, and that was a sport I was involved in, so that kind of was at the forefront of my mind too. And then as this triathlon team came along, triathlon was in the Olympics in 2000, and that was kind of the idea that Keith had, is there's an Olympic event for triathlon now. Why don't we start a feeder system to kind of get young athletes started and on the track for the Olympic Games? So I think he kind of installed that Olympic dream in us, and especially more towards maybe not in the 7 to 11, 12-year-old. But once I started doing the Youth Elite Series and the draft legal stuff, I can remember some specific practices where he would reference the Olympic Games, or me and my buddies would talk about going to the Olympics someday. And I think back then it was definitely just a dream. I don't think very many people would be looking at me saying that that's the guy who's going to be on the Olympic team. But that's kind of where it all started, and where I kind of definitely enjoyed and fell in love with draft legal triathlon.
So, I mean, you raced youth and junior elite, won nationals at both. Obviously, when you were thinking about going to college, was the thought, I want to get somewhere where I can train pretty much year-round, or at least train more often than I can in Chicago. What led you to Arizona?
Right. So it was actually kind of a long process. I had I stepped away from the kids triathlon team at that point, just different coaches at that point, and wanted to do my own thing a little bit, and knew I was going off to college. And a lot of those guys took a chance at the Elite Triathlon Academy that they had started up for a few years in Colorado Springs. And I was kind of done with cold winters and riding on the trainer and running on the treadmill. So I was looking for a place that had my major in physiology, that would be a big college experience, kind of university with a lot of school pride. Since I came from a small all-guys high school, I wanted a little bit more of a college experience, and then also a great place to train. And I looked everywhere from University of Florida to University of San Francisco. And when I went and visited Tucson, I think I went with my dad at that point. We both just kind of looked at each other and said, like, this is the place. This makes sense. There's triathletes that come along here. There's great roads to ride on. The campus is beautiful, and have some good sports teams to go along with it.
So as a collegiate in college, you win the collegiate national championship as a sophomore in draft legal, and the non-draft Olympic while you're at Arizona. Did you, at that point, did you start thinking about racing with some of the pros, and what was your first international race?
Yeah, so a year before that, at collegiate nationals in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, I was the first undergrad and third overall, and that qualified me for a pro card. And I wasn't going to take it that year. That was I was still working with one of my older coaches from high school, and we wanted to take some time and learn how to win. So I was going to race age group for a year, and Hy-Vee was still around, so I wanted to win the car.
Do you guys know about the Hy-Vee triathlon in Iowa? Had huge prize money, car. It was really the biggest prize money race in the sport.
Yeah, so the elite age groupers, you got like a Mini Cooper for winning. So I wanted to try that. But USAT approached me in the summer of 2012 after qualifying for my pro card, and they invited me to go for a month in Europe and to race 4 races in 4 weekends and to train in Spain. And talking about it with my coach and my parents, it was too good of an opportunity to pass up. So that was my first international racing experience, and really showed me and set the bar for what it took to compete on the international level. Because I tried everything from a non-ITU race, but it was like a super sprint in London and Canary Wharf, to a Continental Cup, Olympic distance, a Sprint World Cup in Tijuvaros, Hungary, and kind of got a taste of a little bit of everything there, and came back from that trip. And that's when I sat down again with my mom, and we looked at what it would take for the next few years for if I had a chance to qualify for the games, and if I could graduate college in 3.5 years or 3 years to give myself some extra time.
And you graduated in 3 years?
Yeah, 3 years.
How about a round of applause for that? Yeah. So what a lot of people don't realize is when you think about Ironman racing, in Ironman 70.3, there's 43 full Ironmans, there's 100 and something 70.3s, but when it comes to ITU and WTS races, there's nothing in the States. I mean, Chicago a couple years ago, San Diego a few years ago, but you have to travel and go overseas. When you made that decision that I'm going for the Olympics, how hard was that, and where did you base yourself?
I based myself still out of Tucson, and I didn't graduate college until 2014, and that gave me about 2 years to fully dedicate myself and be a full-time pro. But I had to make some hard decisions. Like I stepped back and I didn't compete in the U23 World Championships in Auckland, which is probably one of the few U23 world champs that suited my abilities with a really hard bike and a wet or non-wetsuit swim at that point. And yeah, it was Tucson served as a good base. There's an airport of just 15, 20 minutes out of town. There's
Having an airport is good. Yeah.
There's tons of training, and it was warm in the winter, and that's what I found was really helpful to me, was being able to be outside on my bike, run outside, and it kept me motivated because juggling classes and training for triathlon and a social life and everything was difficult, and it took me a couple years to kind of figure it out and kind of line things up for myself. And I think my class schedule was completely different each year I did. Each time I had to sign up for classes, trying to figure out if I wanted to block my classes in the morning or the evening, and all of that.
Did you have to do blocks where you go to Europe for a month or two at a time?
Yeah, that happened mostly in the summer, and I did spend a few summers training out of Vitoria, Spain, and Banyoles, Spain, and those were really great. It showed me it was a good camp environment, but I found over the years that I think being based in the States, it always seemed like as I came back, I kind of had this weight lifted off of my shoulders. It's just familiar everywhere you're going.
Right.
And yeah, I really enjoyed those camps, but now I kind of piece together my schedule so that if I'm doing racing in Europe, I can go there, do a couple races in a couple weeks, and then I come back and reset and am able to do a training block because I'm closer to my coaches and
sure.
Able to just kind of balance everything. I've got my physios and stuff here that help out a lot. So yeah.
When did you feel that you really had a shot at making the 2016 Olympic team?
That probably when I crossed the line
in Yokohama.
Yeah, it was. I mean, for me, it started. It was just a baby steps at a time. I've been recently referencing this chart that we were given on our club swim team, where it was a picture of steps, and it had everything from our regional times, A times, state times, all the way up to qualifying for the Olympic Games and like Olympic gold medalist. And I think my career kind of follows that, just taking it like one step at a time. So 2014, or when I first went across in 2012, I was at the very kind of bottom of the steps and just figuring out what it took to get to the stop. And each year I had some breakthrough races that took me to the next level. And for me, I kind of saw that as like progress moving forward. And I think I started to believe, and I had a core group of people that really believed in me. Mm-hmm. And so, but other than that, I think you could say 80 to 90% of most of the triathlon world probably wasn't expecting me to qualify for the games. So you look at all the U.S. athletes who are going for it, and especially the races that I did earn the most points at to qualify for. It really didn't suit my abilities that well. They were kind of runners' courses, and so that was yeah. I don't think anybody would have really thought that.
So last year when you came across the finish line in Yokohama, Japan, right? You're in 17th place, but you've got the Olympic spot, and you've got it, months before the games, which that's so nice to get to firm that up beforehand. What was the feeling like, and were your folks over there? Did you have a sense that, hey, if I finish one of the top Americans here, I've got a spot?
Yeah, no, I had done all the math. So the way that it turned out, they had this points list for ranking the guys because nobody automatically qualified, and I think I was sitting third or fourth at that point, and I knew I had to finish ahead of I forget what order the guys were at there, but I think Eric was sitting in that spot. And yeah, I had to finish a certain amount ahead of him and Kevin to kind of solidify it and be in the top 20. So that whole race was just about me setting up to really finish in that top. Goal was top 15, but to just run a smart race to finish in there. And I mean, I was counting every single 180 and making sure, watching the coaches and making sure what they were telling me where I was at. And yeah, crossing the finish line, I was 95% sure I was qualified, but you never quite know with like the criteria if I had missed some fine print or something. So I was trying to find somebody to actually confirm it. And a lot of the staff there are pretty that they didn't want to say anything to get themselves in trouble, really. So I was kind of like calling people and excited, but also holding back to just make sure that I didn't tweet out something or start calling people and get all excited and then have it taken away from me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think I found out officially when I looked on Twitter and I saw like a "congrats, you qualified" type thing. But yeah, then it was like it was hard to comprehend, and I don't think that it really set in until I started going through and planning for the games and kind of started going through to the different events there, because it had been a dream that was out in front of me for so long. It seemed weird that it was already here and that I had done it.
Well, what's interesting, I think it was 2008, Matt Reed, who lives here locally and was racing for the U.S. at that point, he won what was the Olympic trials down in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and he was, "You've got a spot." "Oh, we might only have 2 spots in the Olympics, so you've got to travel around the world to go secure us the 3rd spot," because Hunter Kemper was injured, Andy Potts was injured. So he did that. He ended up finally getting the spot, but he had been told he had it, and then found out later, whoops, you don't have it.
Yeah, and I think USAT has gotten much, much better at setting the criteria and planning out how everything is going to go along. And you can look back, and each Olympics has been slightly different since it's so new, and there's only been 5 of them now.
5 Olympics,
so, it's been a learning process, I think, for USAT, but I think they've gotten to a point where they're fairly good at writing an objective criteria that allows the athletes to go and compete and express their fitness rather than kind of having a council sit around and try and select athletes, because I think that usually leads to lawsuits, and all sorts of bad stuff happening.
Australia's always in lawsuits with that stuff. So the Olympic experience, some people when they're doing their first Olympics, it's like, hey, I finally got here. I'm going to opening ceremonies. I'm going to closing ceremonies. I'm going to enjoy every second of it. Or it's I'm here on business. I'm going to come in a couple days before, do my event and leave. How did you handle it?
USAT kind of helped structure us a little bit. They had us all on one flight. I think we were going down about 6 to 8 days before the race, and we arrived, with just over a week to kind of prep and be in the city. And they kept us back from the opening ceremonies because the city of Rio is kind of hard to train in. Some guys did hang out in Brazil beforehand, and they had a training camp set up, but overall it wasn't ideal. So we were able to stay in our camps and finish our training. And then as we flew down, it was mostly just kind of like business as usual. I found it surprisingly easy with how USAT set us up to kind of just go about it and think of it as a WTS race with just 10 less guys. And I think that like for me, like the hardest part was already done. Qualifying was the main goal, and now everything else was icing on the cake. And I mostly wanted to just put myself in the race and to be able to set myself up for success, where I had failed the year before in the test event and not raced well at all in the course.
Right.
And I think this time, just being able to be in the front pack and being able to set myself up and to do all that, like it came away as a success. So it was kind of just being there was definitely a win, and then going after it and kind of being a part of the race was you're part of the race. Yeah. That's really what it came down to. So did you leave there thinking, okay, I got another 4 years, get back here in 2020? Yeah, I feel like I left Rio. I was very proud of the way that I raced and the way that I executed. I had a very good swim bike and just ended up not having very much juice left on the run. And my run fitness was really great beforehand, but for kind of a multitude of little reasons, I just didn't have it on the day on the run and kind of used up all my matches for the first 2/3 of the race, but had set myself up the way I wanted to. So I'd say it's a little bit bittersweet because the place isn't exactly what I wanted, and I still feel like I have a little bit of unfinished business, but 4 years is a really long time, and
yes,
a lot can happen, and there's new guys coming up, and there's people sticking around. So I mean, I'd like to give it another go, but I think I have another year and a half before I really have to buckle down and focus on it.
So the fall of 2015, they have the grand final for the WTS for ITU in Chicago, your hometown. And I was there watching that, and you launched off the front during that bike ride. How cool was that, being in your hometown and leading that race?
Yeah, that came about a month after the test event in Rio, where I just had a terrible race and was just kind of in a slump almost, and had gone back home to train a little bit and kind of refocused and found that I was enjoying the hard work again. And I hadn't really planned to go off the front. It was just like something that started to happen, and I saw the group was letting somebody go, and so I took a chance at that one. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun. I kind of told myself before the race, just whatever happens, just have some fun and try and like put on a good show. And that kind of let me be able to let go and relax. And that's really the race then that gave me the second chance at qualifying for the games after not doing so well in the other qualifying races.
What's amazing is the level of competition in those races. So you came off the bike leading, right? No, you led, and you led for the first full lap of the run. Mm-hmm. You ran 31:26 off the bike for 10K, right? And 19 people passed you.
Yeah.
Okay. Mario Mola won the race and ran 28:59 off the bike, and Javier Gomez ran 29:06. I mean, what the hell? When you look at that type of thing, you go, wait a second, I get 20th in this race, and I'm leading off the bike, and the level of competition, because you had an opportunity last year, you did Alcatraz, got third at Alcatraz. You just did Ironman 70.3 Puerto Rico, you got third there, right? Ran 119 off the bike. So when I look at the differential between, you were only 150 back in that Chicago race, and you were 20th, right? You were like 140 back in Puerto Rico, and you're third. Mm-hmm. Something tells me that that's not a bad distance for you, that 70.3 and full Ironman might be the place to be.
Yeah, the run is still like those guys, Javier Gomez and Mario Mola, their running is incredible. And like I said, some of those races like Chicago it's set up to be a very kind of runner race.
Yes.
It wasn't necessarily, it didn't set up well for a bike breakaway. We just kind of forced it to happen. And, some of these races, there's more opportunity to come off with a group and still pull together a good run. But, yeah, my running isn't quite at that level just yet. It's slowly getting there. But I'm excited to keep going and doing 70.3 races. I think the full Ironman still has quite a ways to go.
Stay away.
Yeah, quite a ways. It's a little long. The 70.3 felt pretty long overall. But I've been really enjoying it. It's a slightly different type of training, and the racing itself is a little bit different too. And I went into that race in Puerto Rico just wanting to make sure that I survived the whole race and had a nice steady race overall, because I was a little bit apprehensive about going too hard, feeling good early or something, and then roasting in the heat. And I think I walked away with a pretty successful race and overall a good feel for the event.
Well, and especially when you look at, the run splits. Taylor Reed won it, and he ran 1:18.18. Andy Potts was 1:19.19, and you were 1:19.56. So you were right there. You're running right with those guys, and so that bodes well for that 70.3. And you've got Ironman 70.3 national North American championships coming up next weekend. You feeling pretty good about that?
Yeah, I'm excited. The start list is stacked, and I think the course sets up well for me. I think the way the race plays out, too, will set up fairly well, and workouts have been going well so far. I think I've got a little bit more miles in my legs than I did for Puerto Rico, and it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out. I don't think you could ask for really a better field aside from the world champs, but it should be fun.
What's been the toughest adaptation for you going from, because really you talk about the Olympic distance is half of the 70.3. I mean, you're doubling the distance. What's been the toughest adaptation for you?
I think the toughest thing for me in most races is just being patient and waiting, and that's something that I've really tried to work on this year, even in the sprint and Olympic distances, not just using all your matches on the bike leg or on the swim leg. And half Ironman, you can really mess up your race if you go out too hard too early. And I kind of experienced that in Puerto Rico, where it felt really, really easy at the beginning. But it's funny how it just slowly kind of seeps into you, and then all of a sudden you're looking down at your power meter, your watch, and you're going, this just felt easy like 20 minutes ago. Why do I feel so terrible right now?
Nobody in this room can relate to that. Nobody here's ever felt that before. It's always easy for everybody here.
Right.
That's just you, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well. Ooh.
You better figure that stuff out.
Right, exactly.
Nobody here has ever had that problem before. You're 24. You won't be 25 until December. Everything you've already been to an Olympic team, right? And you've got you're having success at the 70.3 already. What do you see for when I look at our Americans, right? Our women are dominant. The guys have not been so far, right, on the Olympic scene. What do you think needs to change to have our men to be able to compete with the Alistair Brownlees and Javier Gomez and Mario Molas of the world?
I think one of the biggest things is just retention rate. Going through college, it's hard for a guy to take 4 years or 5 years off triathlon and then jump right back in. The learning curve in the WTS races is so steep.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that the women's side isn't, but for the men's side, it's really, really competitive. There's a lot less gaps to fill, and so that means there's less mistakes to make. And if you're starting kind of coming out of college, having never really done the race before, or if you don't have like quite a bit of experience, it can be kind of a crash course in triathlon that can be sometimes overwhelming. And for our women, it's worked very, very well. Obviously, we've had a lot of success with taking women from like a young age in triathlon all the way through, and from taking them in the CRP program. But for the men, it's been a little bit harder. We haven't been able to retain them as much. And I think learning a lot of the basic skills early and drilling that into your head and kind of having that down to be able to focus on other things, that's really important. But I think that there's a lot of good guys kind of coming up through the system, and there's a lot of U.S. guys now, too, are trying to kind of take over that old guard of Hunter Kemper and Andy Potts and even T.O. and stuff, who were fairly successful or very successful at the ITU stuff, and were starting to figure it out a little bit more. I think there's a little bit of a gap in there between some of those guys before, like when they moved on and before some other people stepped up.
Yeah, from the collegiate side for the Americans, on the women's side, we've been able to take a Gwen Jorgensen, identify her as a great swimmer and runner at the University of Wisconsin, train her on the bike. She didn't get into the sport until 2010. She made the Olympic team in 2012, and she couldn't clip in at a stoplight. She had no idea. 2012, Katie Zafaris was a steeplechaser at Syracuse. Identified her because she swam and ran, and she made the Olympic team this year. But for the guys, you've got the guys competing with, guys like Javier Gomez and Alistair Brownlee, who've been racing since they were 8, 9 years old. So the level of competition, the depth of competition on the men's side has been tougher for the men to be identified out of college and all of a sudden be taught to ride the bike and try to ride with Alistair Brownlee and Javier Gomez. It's just not going to happen.
Right, yeah, there's just, like I said, there's almost no room for mistake. These guys are world class at pretty much every sport you do. You look at the swim, and Richard Varga could probably make the Olympic team and make the Olympic final or get close in the 1500. And Alistair Brownlee, and at times they've had courses kind of similar to some of the pro cycling races, and he's had comparable times to a lot of those guys. And the running too, you've seen him run on the track at 28:30 and race against a lot of runners. So you're taking you're taking 3 sports that you have to be very, very good at to be competitive.
Yeah.
And, I'd say, the women are very similar. Like you look at Gwen, she's pretty unbelievable overall. Like it's
absolutely.
We've gotten. I don't want to call it lucky, because that takes away a lot from Barb Lindquist in identifying these athletes, but we've been able to snag some pretty awesome women, and I think we're still just on the guys' side too, looking from the junior side on up. We're just looking for some of those guys to really break out and take over some of those top spots from Great Britain and
So
Spain.
The best race you've ever had?
That's a hard one.
Or the race that meant the most to you?
It's hard to leave the Olympics off of that, but I'd say that it's probably the qualifying race in Yokohama, and it's taken a little while for that to set in. But I think that whole kind of journey through where I didn't have a great season of racing in 2015, especially through the middle of the year, and to bounce back and have a very good race in Chicago, and then to be able to qualify in a course, and with the way the race played out, to a runner-specific race, and to be able to do it when people didn't think I'd be able to, I'd say that's pretty special to me. So
the rest of this year will be what?
Oh, a lot of things. A few people have taken a look at my schedule and kind of been like, "You're doing what?" So I'll have St. George next weekend, and then through the middle of the season, I'm doing quite a bit of super sprint racing with the Major League Triathlon.
Yes.
And their relay races, and then I'll do some more ITU races with Hamburg, hopefully the mixed team relay, and then Montreal and Edmonton, and I'll be doing a lot of the Escape series as well, Escape from Alcatraz and Philly, and
the Escape to Alcatraz series.
Yeah, exactly.
Some Philly and DC and Geneva,
some of those. Yep.
And some of those.
Yeah.
Very cool. And for how many people have seen the mixed team relay? A few. Explain the mixed team relay, because it's really fun, and it's probably I think what's going to happen for us in the Olympics moving forward. If it's not 2020, by 2024, the Olympic distance will be more the sprint distance. It'll be a 750 swim, a 12.5-mile bike, and a 5K run. And that way they can do a sprint relay as well, where they'll take 2 men and 2 women and explain how it works.
Yeah, this is actually my favorite format. I've been racing this. I think I took part in the first World Champs.
Yeah.
We put together a junior team. It was during the High V race, and I've just loved it ever since. They've been doing it at junior races, collegiate nationals, and they have a world championship every year. And for the past few years, it's been in Hamburg. And it goes girl, guy, and each person does a super sprint triathlon. So about a 300-meter swim, 6 or 7K bike, and then 1,500 or 1,600-meter run. And it's just one of the most exciting formats in racing. There's a bunch of different lead changes. Everybody's going out like as fast as they can. There's just a lot of stuff that can happen. It's unpredictable because you need 4 strong people on the team, and there's a lot of countries who have, like Spain, who have really, really strong guys, and their women just aren't up at the same level, and you don't see them have as much success as other people. And for the U.S., we've had the opportunity now a couple times to step on the podium with our strong women, and then our guys have kind of helped step up a little bit. And yeah, it's a great event. Like, if you have a chance, like, I think there might be a small magazine show on YouTube or something. Like, it's just a cool event to watch, and the Hamburg has done a fantastic job. That's probably one of the best crowds in triathlon out there. It's just about 5 people deep, and the course is really compact, so it's a great atmosphere, and everybody just gets really, really excited for the event.
So, and it starts with a person diving off the dock. And so each person runs up and dives off the dock. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
I'm surprised they haven't yet made a highlight reel and a blooper reel of all the dives. I think I'm about 50-50 with good dives versus bad dives. I've almost gone heels over head a couple times, but yeah, it's just an awesome event. It's really, really cool.
I love that. So what I love is you're 24 years old, and you're basically, what, a 16-year triathlon veteran at this point?
Yeah, right about.
16 years. You still love it? Is it still something you want to be pursuing forever and ever here?
I really do. I love being outside, and I think through my younger years and even now, triathlon.
My younger years. I'm 24. Through my younger years. Okay, go ahead. Grams, tell us what you're saying.
Yeah, when I was a kid, having a short attention span, it helped me stay active. I never really got bored with one sport or another, and I still find that today. If I'm dragging in one of the sports, I always have another one to kind of fall back on, and just the community is great overall. I don't think I've been to a triathlon event where I'm walking away scratching my head going like, man, those people were awful. They're always just really good people who are surrounded by it, and they're all really excited about the sport too, and that makes it exciting for me to compete in and to push myself.
Now, have you been to Kona?
I've watched it the past couple of years.
What do you think?
It was hard watching it. I don't know how people race it. I stood out at mile 1 in like the I think it's the 16K mark or something.
Oh,
on
you're
the way
with
back
Jim
from the
Vance
gym,
out there,
taking
yeah.
splits. And I know one of the years I just got roasted, and another year I think I brought like something to stand in the shade and kind of hide. And I think I took a nap before that too. And it was just watching those guys. It was really hot, and I just can't imagine
It's
doing
silly,
that.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. I
But
remember.
still, there's a draw.
I remember McKeely Jones, who won the silver in 2000. She came over in 2002, 2003 to see the Ironman, and she was standing there as whoever won the race was being taken off on a stretcher, and they just won the race. And she's like, "This is the silliest thing I've ever seen. I will never do this." And 3 years later, she wins a stupid thing.
Yeah, I can see why. There are parts of it like that you look at and you just go, "This is, I don't know why people are doing this to themselves." But then you go to the finish line at midnight, or you watch some people who have a great day, and you start thinking to yourself, "Well, maybe I can do that." But I'd say that's probably not for quite a long time. So I think I got to get used to the half Ironman stuff first.
Love it. How about a round of applause for Mr. Ben Kanute?
Thank you.
I love it. Ben's going to hang out, and he's got some stuff to sign. So thanks, everybody, for coming. How about, again, another round of applause for Mr. Ben Kanute. Good luck
Thank you.
next week at St. George.
Thank you very much.
All right.